Jonah's like, you just brought them back here to die. You don't care about any of us. You just care about your stupid timeline and your stupid rules. You just brought them to slaughter. Hey guys, it's Mia here, and welcome back once again to another bookish video. If you remember last bookish video, we talked about the book Found by Margaret Peterson Haddix, which is actually the first book in an 8-book series called The Missing series. So today we are going to actually be talking about the second book in the series, Scent. So with this being the second book in the series, there are going to be spoilers for both this book and for Found, so I suggest if you have not read either of these books, you go and read those before you watch either of the reviews for these. So let's get into it. So in Found, we find out that the kids that are considered the missing are actually kids that are stolen from history. They end up being taken to this adoption conference, and now all of the missing kids from history have been assembled in one place, where two sides are fighting over them. The ones that want to sell them off to the highest bidder to make money, and the time cops that want to rewrite the timeline. So they end up being shot back in time to the 15th century, and that is exactly where Scent kicks off. There are no breaks in between Found and Scent. It just goes right on into it. So Scent takes off with them landing in the 15th century. Chip, a boy named Alex, Caitlin, and Jonah. And if you don't remember, Caitlin and Jonah are siblings, and Chip is Jonah and Kate's friend, and at this point, we don't really know much about Alex because he was just one of the missing kids that were also at the conference. But it turns out that Chip and Alex are actually brothers. Not just any brothers, but princes. It turns out that they are the princes of England in the 15th century. Prince Henry and Prince something. But they end up going back to the 15th century, and they see some boys on the bed. And these boys are like glowing, ghostly beings, and they're like, whoa, this is bizarre. And then Caitlin goes, Chip, Alex, they kind of look like you guys. Why is that? And they go, they don't look like us. And she goes, yes, they do. They look like younger versions of you. So Chip and Alex feel drawn to these ghostly glowing boys, and they can't explain why. So when they go closer to these boys, they feel a connection to them, and they start to like meld into them. And they were like, whoa, does that happen for you or Jonah? So when Jonah and Kate tried, nothing happened. So it turns out that those ghostly figures were actually Chip and Alex's 15th century selves, and what they were actually supposed to be doing in that timeline before they were stolen from history. So all of these kids were taken from history because they were fated for a horrible death. So Jonah and Caitlin got it in their heads. They're like, well, what if we could save Chip without hurting the timeline? What if we could save them without hurting the timeline? Because at this point, Caitlin kind of has a crush on Chip, and Jonah is good friends with Chip because they were living in the same neighborhood. So the time cop, who they call JB, which is short for Janitor Boy, his real name is really hard to remember, so the whole book they just call him JB, short for Janitor Boy, because that's how they first were introduced to the time cop. So JB, who is the one that sent them back to the 15th century, where Jonah and Caitlin tagged along because they didn't want to lose Chip, and they thought it was unfair that he was being unfairly thrown back in time against his wishes. So they grabbed on as tight as they could and hitched a ride to the 15th century. Now, This is where time travel starts to get a little hard to understand, because something as simple as accidentally blowing out a candle could completely change history. So they have to be really, really, really careful in order to save Chip and Alex without it hurting the timeline and making it to where none of them were ever born. So all throughout this, Jonah kind of struggles with, he's like, okay, how are we going to save Chip? What are we going to do? We barely can talk 15th century. Thou dost proclaim I am not that privy to this information. That's how they talk. So they have like translators in this little high-tech phone thing. It's called, I think it's called an elucidator? An elucidator? I called it an elucidator in my head. You can pronounce it however you want to. That's just how I pronounced it. But they have this whole communicator thing that they talk to JB with, and they start to get frustrated because soon they realize that somebody is trying to kill the boys. Once again, all of these kids that were stolen were taken from horrible fates. So Jonah's like, you just brought them back here to die. You don't care about any of us. You just care about your stupid timeline and your stupid rules. You just brought them to slaughter. And this book doesn't sugarcoat it either, like most books for kids do, because these came out around when I was in middle school. I mean, we read this for my middle school curriculum, at least the first one. But she specifically says in the book, they're gonna kill them. You sent them to be murdered. You don't care. Like, she doesn't sugarcoat the blood, the death, the violence. She doesn't sugarcoat any of that, which is something that I feel as an adult reading it now was very much appreciated and helped me still very much enjoy the story, because she does not sugarcoat the stakes. These boys will be hacked in half if something goes wrong. You will completely delete yourself from history if you change too much about what happened. You will be killed because these people want to take the throne from you. She doesn't sugarcoat any of that, and I think that as an adult helps you still enjoy the story, because she doesn't talk down to her audience, even though these books were intended for younger readers. It makes it still very much easy to enjoy as a younger reader, or as an older reader now, because she doesn't sugarcoat these things, and it's very at front, and there are very real stakes that these kids could go to. Either they're too late to save their friend and they watch him get hacked in half by a maniac on the battlefield, or they save their friend but they do it at the wrong time at the wrong place and completely erase and ruin all of history. And that's what Jonah struggles with. He feels very much like he has to take charge, because he's the reason he's been fighting back this whole time. He's the one that realizes this is something going on, we need to figure it out. When at first he felt kind of, yeah, we're adopted, why are you trying to push your parents out? This all started with him trying to help Chip figure out who he really was, because his parents lied to him his whole life. And Jonah, having parents that were honest with him about him being adopted, felt that that was very wrong of them to do. So he agreed to help Chip figure out who he was, no matter what it took. And my goodness, like Chip says, when you make a promise, you really keep it, because he went above and beyond, not only to make sure that all the kids in the cave were safe before they were transferred. He went into the 15th century to stick with Chip and Alex and help them get through it and save their lives. He's constantly a great big brother to Catherine, because all he can think about is keeping her protected and saving his friends. Like, he's a very selfless kid, and I feel like that's another thing that makes it enjoyable to read as an adult, is because the kids act very adult. Like, they still have moments where they're like, we're just kids, we can't handle this, I want to go back home to my parents. But for the most part, the kids get through these situations and they are adult about it. They figure their way out of it, and it's just an enjoyable read. And the plot They even compared it to Lion King in the book. They were like, this is like Lion King. Didn't Lion King have an uncle that was trying to kill him after killing his father? Because that's what's happening to you right now, and holy crap, this is crazy. So, this story is just a roller coaster of a ride, and we start to get more of the time travel stuff explained, which time travel always hurts my head because it's like you were here, but then it was supposed to happen anyway, so you were always supposed to go back in time to do this. If you sneeze wrong, you can change the timeline. If you blow out the candle at the wrong moment, you're busted like that. It's an enjoyable ride. She does not sugarcoat the danger, the blood, the battle, the stakes of it. She does not sugarcoat any of that. She has characters that feel very put together, and like they said in the book, when you make a promise, you really keep it. And now this book is the next installment. I almost dropped the books on my lap. I'm going into the third book in the series, Sabotaged. And as you can tell, these covers look pretty much the same, which is something I don't like about the newer cover art, because the older cover art, which I don't have my old copies of the first two books to show you, had given you insight into what was going to happen in the book. On Found, it was a plane, and just a plane on a runway. On Scent, it was a medieval castle, which he's a king living in a castle. Haven't ever read this one because I was never able to find it, so I can't tell you what happens. But I will say once again that Jonah and his sister are traveling back in time, this time with a dog in tow. How does the dog fit in? Don't know, can't tell you. That was in this book. So, we're going to see where the adventure goes. They are going with another missing child into the past yet again. Can they do it? I don't know. There's 5 more books, so probably they will succeed. Will they screw up time along the way? Guess we'll have to wait and see. But I'm super excited to go into this one, and honestly, by the time you guys see this, I'll probably be either a great chunk of the way into it or done with this already, because I have other videos lined up to take care of. Like, I'm filming this before I've even edited the Found one, so that tells you anything. We're on a roll. So, what are you guys reading? Let me know down in the comments below. Have you ever read this? Let me know too, but please no spoilers. That is rude. Bye, guys.